Welcome to the policy portion of child protection training for Newlonsburg Presbyterian Church. We are committed to upholding the promise we make to our children at their baptism to guide and nurture them in the Christian faith. In order to do that, we strive to provide a safe environment. This presentation covers the basic information outlined in our church's child protection policy and will prepare you to satisfy one of the requirements for the online version of child protection training. In order to completely satisfy Newlonsburg Presbyterian Church's child protection training requirement online, you will need to turn in a few documents to the church office. First, you should complete the quiz that goes along with this video. It is available for download on our website at www.newlonsburgchurch.org/protectourkids. Please print it, fill it out as you watch this video, and hand it into the church office when it is complete. You will also want to download a copy of the Child Protection Policy and the Incident Report Form, since some parts of the quiz are covered in this video, while others are covered in the written documents. All volunteers are required to fill out a volunteer application form and hand it in to the church office. You will also need to complete the Pennsylvania Child Welfare Resource Center's online course and hand in the certificate of completion to the church office. The course is available at www.reportabusepa.pitt.edu. This is in addition to clearances required by Pennsylvania state law. You will find more information about that in the resources already named and in this video. As we seek to guide and nurture children in their faith, one of the first things we must do is provide a safe church environment. A safe church environment is one that provides for the protection of the physical, emotional, and spiritual health and well-being of each person. More than simply offering protection from danger, the safe church sees itself as a sanctuary where one finds protection, security, support, guidance, and the presence of God. In this definition, there are two questions that are implied. First, can people who come to our church feel safe? Second, can we keep people here safe? Our child protection policy takes a step toward answering the second question affirmatively, with the hope that it will help those who come to our church to feel safe. Our child protection policy applies to all children under age 18 and also applies in some instances to vulnerable adults. You can see here the areas that are covered by the policy. Please turn to it now as we go through the basic information so that you have a general idea of what it covers. If you haven't already printed the quiz, you should do that now. Any individual wishing to work with children or youth must fill out a ministry volunteer application form. Based on the information on that form, individuals may be asked to come in for an interview and may be vetted through reference checks and by putting their name in the National Sex Offenders Registry. Anyone working with children or youth must also have satisfied the church's requirement for child protection training, which is required every 5 years. Under Pennsylvania House Bill 435, which was signed into law in 2014, all regular volunteers must have their clearances. Regular volunteers include, but are not limited to, those working with Sunday school, children and worship, the nursery, RAM, lost sheep, fish, Vacation Bible School, Club 45, and Quest. 3 clearances are required. The Pennsylvania State Police and Childline clearances are free. More information is available at www.newlonsburgchurch.org/protectourkids, or paper application forms are available through the church. The third clearance is the FBI fingerprint clearance. Volunteers who have lived in the state of Pennsylvania for less than 10 years must have this clearance done. Those who have lived in Pennsylvania for the past 10 or more continuous years may sign an affidavit. A notarized copy will then be accepted in place of the FBI fingerprint clearance. A copy of all clearances must be kept on file in the church office for all active volunteers working with children or youth. Volunteers maintain the originals of all clearances, which then may be used for service at other organizations. A photocopy is kept on file at the church. Clearances must be updated every 60 months or 5 years. If you have already had your clearances done for another organization or for employment purposes, you may provide the church with a copy, which will be valid until 60 months after the date each clearance was issued. If you already have valid clearances, you do not need to have them redone as long as you provide a copy of them to the church. The two-adult rule may be found on page 3 of the policy and states that 2 non-related adults should be present in each room where there are children. Spouses are considered related adults and therefore do not satisfy the two-adult rule. Youth helpers are encouraged to participate in ministries of the church for their own benefit and growth. However, they should not be counted as one of the 2 adults. The language of the two-adult rule is meant to be taken seriously, but not necessarily exhaustively. Context may be considered. If there is only one adult in a Sunday school classroom on a Sunday morning when many other people are walking around and there is a window in the classroom door, the situation might be handled differently than if only one adult is present for an activity at night in an isolated part of the building. Parents are ultimately responsible for their children at church-sponsored events if programming is not available for children, or if the parents choose not to have their children participate in the programming that is offered. This applies just as much to meeting nights when childcare is not offered as it does to those who would rather have their children stay in worship on Sunday mornings and not utilize the nursery. All ministries with children and youth strive to maintain one adult for every 4 children in the nursery, one adult to every 6 preschool-aged children, one adult to every 7 children in kindergarten through the 5th grade, and one adult to every 10 youth in the 6th grade or above. After we apply the two-adult rule, this means that the capacity in the church nursery is 2 adults for 8 children. If there are more than 8 children, an additional adult or adults should be sought, and the children may divide into 2 groups, with the additional new group going to a separate space. Volunteer drivers should be between the age of 23 and 65. Individuals who are 21 or 22 may be considered on an individual basis, and those over 65 may drive after providing the church with a letter from their physician stating they are of satisfactory health to drive. No one under the age of 21 is permitted to drive for church-sponsored events. All drivers must have a current driver's license and proof of insurance on file with the church. If you are driving children home and must be alone with a child in the car, please contact the child's parent, preferably by text, when you are on your way, and notify a church staff member if possible. All church volunteers, especially those working with younger children, should ask the child's parent if the child has used the restroom lately. If not, the parent should be encouraged to take the child to the restroom before dropping them off. If a classroom restroom is available, it should be used. It is at the discretion of the adult worker or volunteer whether or not a child should be accompanied to the restroom. Often, children in 3rd grade or older are able to go to the restroom by themselves. If a child is in the process of toilet training, they should be accompanied to the restroom. If you are accompanying a child or a group of children to the restroom, first sweep the restroom by opening the door and calling out to see if anyone is inside. If someone is inside, you and the child should wait in the hallway until the restroom is empty. Once the restroom is empty, the child should be allowed to enter while you wait in the hallway. If significant time has passed or it sounds as though a child may be having difficulty, call out to the child to see if help is needed. If help is needed, the door to the restroom should be propped open while still maintaining privacy for the child. Always avoid being in a restroom alone behind closed doors with a child or group of children who are not your own. If you are helping a child in the restroom, use a speaking voice that is loud enough to make it apparent to people passing by that nothing inappropriate is going on. It is expected that church members will not display or transmit sexually explicit images or messages. Adults who work with children or youth are expected to refrain from initiating contact with minors online. Please note the Social Networking Code of Conduct as outlined on page 4 of the Child Protection Policy. If a minor initiates contact through social media with an adult, it is up to the adult's discretion whether or not to accept it. If you choose to communicate with a child or youth online, Transparency is expected, and you should make use of privacy settings to avoid inappropriate contact being transmitted. Adults are permitted to create separate social media profiles for their personal contacts and for their church contacts. A vulnerable adult is an individual 18 years of age or older without the developmental or cognitive capacity to consent or whose physical ability prohibits their regular participation in many church activities. Those who are working with vulnerable adults must either have their clearances on file or use the 2-adult rule. If you are using the 2-adult rule, it is not necessary for the second adult to be someone affiliated with the church. Please note that the portions of the child protection policy pertaining to restrooms and transportation also apply to vulnerable adults. It is expected that all pastors, staff, and volunteers at Newlonsburg Presbyterian Church will not engage in prohibited practices such as carrying a weapon on church property, using controlled or illegal substances, causing mental or emotional injury to a minor, or engaging in sexual, physical, emotional, or spiritual abuse. Alcohol is not permitted on the premises, and leaders of children are not to be under the influence of alcohol while leading or participating in a church-sponsored event. Not everyone who uses the church building is a church member. Outside groups using church space are expected to be responsible for the children in their care, stay in the space assigned to them, and refrain from allowing unaccompanied children to roam the halls. We understand that accidents happen when children are around. When they do, always tell the parent and fill out an incident report form if needed. On the screen, you can see some of the types of situations that would warrant filling out an incident report form. The general rule of thumb is that if an injury requires anything bigger than a Band-Aid, an incident report form should be filled out. These situations are not limited only to children and youth, so any type of major injury that should have a form filled out even if the person injured is an adult. There are 2 other situations, apart from accidental injuries, where filling out an incident report form would be required. The first situation is in the event of a boundary crossing. A boundary crossing is a situation in which inappropriate behavior with a minor occurs but does not fall under prohibited practices nor warrant a report under the guidelines of mandated reporting. The final reason for filling out an incident report form is if you ever need to file a report with Childline for a situation of suspected abuse. If that happens, you should always fill out an incident report form and be sure the information in it is kept confidential. If an incident report is filed out due to a suspicion or allegation of abuse or neglect, there are specific responsibilities depending on whether you are a pastor, ministry director, employee, or volunteer. Please see page 7 of the policy to see what your particular responsibilities would be in this situation. Thank you for your dedication and care of our children. You are an important part of the body of Christ as you nurture and guide our children in their faith. Please turn in these documents to the church office as soon as you are able. If you are already volunteering with children or youth, we need these documents within the next 30 days. If you plan to volunteer with children or youth but have not yet started, you will need to hand everything in within 90 days of beginning your service. This concludes your training. Thank you for your time. If you have any questions, please do not hesitate to contact us.